We are often told that vulnerability is for the weak. Our instinctive reaction to vulnerability is often to try to make it go away. We try to shield ourselves from our emotions with whatever we get our hands on, whether with alcohol, comfort eating, or shopping. But what if vulnerability is not a sign of weakness? What if vulnerability and other similar emotions are a way to summon the courage to become brave, so we can face the situation at hand? In this video, I will give you 4 skills to become a leader. But not just any leader. A leader who is brave enough to look at adversity in the face and agile enough to return victorious every single time. Hey friends, welcome back to the channel and to the very first episode of the Book Club, a new series where I will be summarizing critical insights from the book I most enjoy and love. And today I'm going to talk about Dare to Lead, which is this very dense but nicely written book by the Professor Cassandra Brené Brown, popularly known as Brené Brown, who has dedicated past 20 years of her life to the study of courage, vulnerability, shame, and empathy. In fact, as a side quote, if you are a coach or an aspiring professional coach for that matter, then she is a must-read author. Now, why did I choose this book as my first book to summarize in the book club? And the reason for that is because, in my opinion, it's crucial to have courage in all walks of life, let alone being a leader. I cannot think of one thing worth accomplishing that does not require courage. Courage is the force that allows us to overcome impediments, push through adversity, and rise above our fears. There is no greatness that is not rooted in courage. But here's the thing. The call to courage comes to all of us in life. The question is, are we going to answer it? Dare to Lead is all about courageous leadership, which is a must-have skill for all the leaders if they want to take their organization and their careers to new heights. Sheryl Sandberg, the CEO of Facebook, describes this book as a roadmap for anyone who wants to be a leader who leads mindfully, lives fearlessly, and most importantly, leads courageously. Through examples from research, interviews, and academic studies, along with evidence from psychology and neuroscience, the book explains how leaders, with the help of courage and vulnerability, can create an organizational culture that promotes the connection between employees, a purpose in what they do, and ultimately favoring the development of a high-performing environment. So, if you are looking to find ways of building courage in your workplace, then this is the book for you. The thesis behind the book is that the leaders and teams face serious problems when showing up vulnerable at work, making them sabotage not only themselves but also the team's creativity and their desire to innovate. Brené says that leaders, that's all of us, but especially those in self-managing structures where they are required to empower their people and teams, need first to build the courage and then lead with it. In her 2-decade-long research, she found that we need braver, more daring leaders to flourish and innovate modern organizations. But what does it take to build a culture of courage within the organization? This book is the answer to that question. One of the most powerful bits of information to come out of this book is the list of top 10 dysfunctional behaviors and cultural issues as identified by leaders worldwide who participated in her research. She then grouped 4 leadership skills that are required to overcome those barriers. Let's first have a look at the 10 barriers. Barrier number 1. Fear of conflict and crucial conversations. People, in general, avoid tough conversations that require them to give honest feedback. And this usually is due to the lack of courage or skills needed to handle specific situations, which, if you look at it, is so true. Barrier number 2 is lack of candidness during change. We spend most of our time managing and addressing problematic behaviors, when we should be spending that time acknowledging and addressing the fears that come with the change or the feelings that show up during challenges. Barrier number 3 is lack of trust, which is caused by our inability to connect or have empathy for others. Barrier number 4 is lack of innovation. Most leaders are not willing to take intelligent risks. Brené explains that this is due to the fear of rejection or shame that comes with trying something and failing at it, preventing them from expressing bold and innovative ideas. Barrier number 5 is rumination. Now, I'm pretty sure we can all relate to this. We constantly think about our past mistakes, setbacks, and disappointments that make us second guess our further actions, rather than regrouping and finding a solution. Barrier number 6 is a culture of blame. I'm sure we're all guilty of this. We blame and shame others and give little room for understanding, accountability, and learning. Barrier number 7 is ignoring inclusivity, diversity, and equity. We try to avoid conversations on diversity and inclusivity due to the fear of coming across as wrong or saying something that might get misunderstood. Barrier number 8 rush to problem solving, and action bias. We often try to find an immediate fix to the problems instead of identifying, solving, and creating a sustainable solution. Barrier number 9 is lack of clear vision and values. Now, I have seen this firsthand. Most of the time, we set such values that are not based on measurable behaviors that can be taught or evaluated, but rather on immeasurable things like aspirations. Barrier number 10 is perfectionism, which keeps us trapped in an unproductive environment and deprives us of a chance to learn and grow. This list is important not only because of how common and pervasive these issues are, but also because how difficult it is to identify and articulate these issues, especially when you are in the midst of chaos. All of these issues create anxiety, defensiveness, selfishness, shame, and general discouragement that leads to disengagement and dissatisfaction. Now, when I looked at the list above, I immediately saw the struggles that I usually face as a leader. The struggles that are more psychological in nature, that are beyond just everyday organizational impediments. I remember when I first joined this company as an entry-level Java developer, I was given the task to peer review the code written by a very senior full-stack developer who wrote some code to perform cash transactions from one bank account to another. Now, this task was just a formality since the code was already peer reviewed by other senior developers. Nevertheless, within 30 minutes of reading the code, I spotted 9 errors. After I found those errors, all I had to do was point to the senior developers their mistakes, which was relatively easy. Well, not exactly. All sort of fears started to cloud my mind. Fears like, I'm just an entry-level programmer. How can I tell my seniors with 24 years of experience that their code has errors? What if I'm wrong? I may sabotage my relationship with those who may influence my career. But at that moment, I didn't have a choice. I had to report those errors. So I humbled myself and reported those errors. It turned out that those errors were just a test to check my capability as an entry-level developer. Reflecting after so many years, I realized that at the moment I humbled myself, I was the most vulnerable. And what I did was quite courageous. As an entry-level programmer, I spoke up to the senior developers. I did what the right thing to do was. As leaders, we all suffer from these inner struggles that we experience when we lead through discomfort. The discomfort that is caused by this deep-rooted fear, the fear of unknown. Things like, what will happen if I empower my subordinates? What will be the repercussions of speaking up in front of senior executives? This fear is the barrier, and the only way to get rid of this barrier is by learning courage-building skills. Courage, the author says, is a collection of 4 leadership skills that can be taught, observed, and measured. Skill number 1 is befriending vulnerability. And in the book, Brené exaggerates it by saying that a leader must rumble with vulnerability because that's how important it is. The term rumbling with vulnerability means vibrating at such frequency that creates an atmosphere which is full of trust, where people feel that they can have an open and honest conversation. This rumble, this resonance is achieved by making it acceptable for people to show their weaknesses or say what they want to say without fearing how they will come across. An interview that the author conducted with a group of soldiers revealed that the feeling of vulnerability always accompanies acts of courage. Vulnerability, therefore, is a sign of strength and not of weakness. It is a sign of courage. Whenever we choose courage, we unknowingly also choose vulnerability. And isn't that precisely what courage is all about? Acting despite fear, uncertainty, and potential danger? Feeling vulnerable is surprisingly common but highly ignored human emotion that we feel during the times of uncertainty and when we open ourselves to others. Now, you might ask, Vibhor, why ignored? It is ignored because most people feel a sense of shame when they feel vulnerable. As well-respected, educated, and highly regarded members of the society and high-profile workers in our companies, how can we let people know about our vulnerabilities? So, we learn to ignore it. Brené says that instead of looking at vulnerability as a weakness that inevitably allows feelings of self-protection and defensiveness to take over, the key is to view vulnerability as an asset, as a tool to overcome our fears. Being vulnerable means being honest. Honest about the feelings and emotions and what you're going through in your work and life, and then communicating those feelings, those emotions, and what you're experiencing to your team or your family and friends. Now, hold on for a second. It doesn't mean going into details about every aspect of your life with your team members, but it does mean addressing issues sincerely, openly, and more clearly. For example, if you and your team are having trouble reaching the numbers on the chart and you're expected to increase your team's performance by the end of the year, You could approach your team by saying, I know it is tough and I don't know how we are going to get there, but I have complete faith in us and I'm confident that together we will come up with a plan and a process that will have the potential to lead us to success. Brené claims that at such moments, when you're choosing to be a courageous leader, you're unknowingly also choosing to be a vulnerable leader. There is no other way. It comes as a single package. So, if you build a culture where vulnerability is seen as a weakness, then don't ask people to innovate, because innovation by its very nature requires failure to learn and move forward. Alright, let's talk about skill number 2. Brené says that the second skill to be a successful leader is to have a set of values that we can truly live by. But what is a value? A value is nothing but a way of being. It is that belief that we hold very close to our heart that is very important to us. When it comes to living our values though, we need to lead by example and ensure that our intentions, our words, thoughts and behaviors are aligned with those beliefs. For example, one belief that I have is that I should not have any beliefs. But that doesn't mean that I do not have values. It just means that I value constant change. For me, change is the only constant. I believe in agility and therefore I don't put my belief on anything. Putting simply, I believe in agility because I value constant change. This belief in agility is very clear in my mind. And if you want to be an extraordinary leader, you need to have clarity about your values. Let me give you a few examples. It could be freedom that you value the most, or justice, or kindness, discipline, honesty, etc. It does not matter what you value. Having clarity about your values is a must. People who know their values have a better handle on adversity. They can use their values as a guide that can lead them in dark and difficult times. Their values allow them to be resilient and do what's necessary. The author of this book says that after a failure, the strength to carry on, try again and face the office the following day comes not just from the grit and determination, but from the core values. Speaking of agile transformation, leading a team into bold new ways of thinking, believing and working can feel quite overwhelming, especially when intentions of doing so aren't as straightforward as they need to be. So for those novel initiatives, when I coach organizations on agile transformation, almost always the first step I propose is to define the overall intention behind the transformation with a set of values. Values create a shared purpose and vision. That's what the people who wrote Agile Manifesto did. They created a set of values which served a common purpose that everyone could align on, ultimately revolutionizing the software industry. Okay, let's talk about skill number 3, which is this ability to generate trust. But what is trust? Now, I have written a lot about creating trust within teams in my posts on LinkedIn. Link is in the description if you want to check those out. But I never got a chance to define what trust really is. Charles Feltman, a world-renowned executive and leadership coach, defines trust in really simple words like this. Trust is choosing to make something that is important to you vulnerable to someone else's actions. He adds that distrust is what I have shared with you that's important to me is not safe with you. Trust is that special ingredient without which vulnerability cannot exist. Think about it. Your team needs to trust you. They need to know that you have their backs. If they are going to perform to the best of their abilities, you need to make them feel comfortable and heard. But what do trustworthy people look like? People who are trustworthy respect other people's boundaries. They are reliable and are accountable for their actions. They do not share information that is not theirs to share. And they choose to do the right thing, even when there is a chance of losing something while doing it. Okay, we now know what trust is and all, but how do we gain someone's trust? Gaining someone's trust doesn't happen overnight. Trust happens in those weak moments, the moments of shame that we often do not like to talk about. Examples of such moments could be admitting when we don't know something. Owning up to mistakes doesn't matter how silly those mistakes might be. Asking for help or support from those who are junior to you. Setting boundaries and knowing when exactly to say no. Keeping someone's secret. And most importantly, choosing courage over comfort. Trust is built in such small moments and often go unnoticed. Blanket statements or grand actions do not make trust. The fourth and the last skill that we need to be brave leaders is the ability to bounce back. Brené says that in order to succeed as brave leaders, we must build the skills and ability to get back up after we suffer a fall, because in quotes, all brave leaders will fall. There is no doubt about that. In her book, Brené uses the analogy of skydivers to explain why this is so important. Before aspiring skydivers board the plane, they spend a few hours in training sessions learning how to land safely on their feet by simply jumping off the ladders. That's right, just the ladders. The lesson for leaders here is that if you're going to be brave, then it's best to prepare yourself in advance for a bumpy touchdown. In other words, you need to learn how to be resilient, how to be flexible, and how to pivot. You must have noticed that in real life, things are done a little differently. Leaders and leadership coaches are usually aware of the need of resilience training, but they teach these skills after a failure or crisis has already happened. It's like teaching new skydivers the right way to hit the ground after they have already landed, or worse, when they are already in, well, air. But it is better to be late than never. During a proper onboarding process, teaching resilience early on won't just make employees more confident and courageous, but also resilient to bounce back from any setbacks they encounter. Interestingly, the emphasis on resiliency is not new to the agile world. We have all heard the slogans of fall forward or fail fast. But without the ability, without the knowledge to bounce back, these slogans can cause more harm than good. Every point in the book, Dare to Lead, highlights that becoming a great leader takes time, commitment, openness to change, trust, and ongoing self-development. The biggest takeaway for me is that when we open ourselves up to vulnerability, we also open ourselves up to courage, which I always knew in the sense that I experienced it all the time. But I didn't realize that it happens with everyone. When we let go of the fear of failure, what emerges is the hidden treasure of bravery. Bravery to improve ourselves and have those crucial conversations with the people who matter the most. If you like the summary of Dare to Lead, then don't forget to check it out. A link is in the description. Also, if you like the video, then give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and don't forget to leave your valuable feedback in the comments. I'll see you in the next video.